Suffolk Pod Show is produced and managed by podtalk.co.uk. I'm Mark Mason.
And I'm Susanna Hornby.
Episode 32. Susanna talks to Nick Collinson, the National Trust General Manager of Suffolk and the Essex coast.
Welcome back to the Suffolk Pod Show, and a very warm welcome to Nick Collinson.
Hi, Susanna.
Hello. Welcome. It's lovely to have you with us. We have actually been cheating, having a quick chat about some fantastic areas, and you've promised you're going to talk about them all later. But shall we start with just before you joined the National Trust and how you evolved into your role now?
How I evolved into my role.
Yes.
That's a very good term to use. How I evolved, gosh. So I was born in Suffolk, and I think really inspired by the countryside and nature by my grandfather. Actually, he used to live on the Gipping at Balham, and I remember watching kingfishers on the river with him when I was a young lad. So I was sort of always passionate about wildlife. Travelled a bit after school. I was rubbish at school. Flunked all my exams. Went travelling for 4 years and was really inspired by working in Israel, working in a mango orchard. And I was just watching a huge amount of bird life around me in this mango orchard. And I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get stuck into a career in environmental conservation. So, I went to university and have done sort of all manner of things between then and now, which has led me to the Trust, which is an organisation I've always been really passionate about in an area I absolutely love and is sort of part of my DNA. So it's it's kind of a dream job, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. From mangoes to Suffolk. I'm trying to get that link. Were you in a kibbutz or on a kibbutz?
No, it's on a moshav. And the benefit of a moshav was that you get paid for your volunteer work. So for a couple of 3 winters while I was travelling, I spent the winters in Israel working on a flower farm with tomatoes and mangoes as other things the farm produced, and had a fantastic time and found myself, I think, Susanna. Yeah. I think that's how I describe it.
I love that. And now you found yourself at the National Trust. Have you always been in this role?
I joined the Trust as General Manager. I joined, initially it was for all the properties on the Suffolk coast, but a couple of years ago I took on all of our properties on the Essex coast as well. So I've got a team of, a brilliant team of property staff and fantastic volunteers who help us look after our places on a day-to-day basis. Brilliant.
No, that's wonderful. But you yourself, you're based in Suffolk?
Yep, based in Suffolk. Certainly, I am now. I live just outside Woodbridge, actually, so I'm very, very sort of right in the middle of my patch, actually, very close to Sutton Hoo. But similarly, Orford Ness is just up the road, and Dunwich isn't too far away.
I have a very specific question about Orford Ness later. But because we were literally talking about it. I can answer it. We were talking about it on our last podcast episode, and I didn't know anything about it. Since then, I've done a little research, so I'll test you later. Yeah. But before we go into the specific areas of Suffolk that you manage and look after, can we talk more about the National Trust and what its overall aim is?
For sure, yeah. So the National Trust is a charity. Its full name is National Trust for Places of Historic Interest or Natural Beauty. So, as listeners will know, and many I'm sure are members of the organisation, we're a membership charity looking after over 500 historic houses and many other places of sort of countryside and natural beauty, over 780 miles of coastline, 250,000 hectares of land. So that's about 600,000 acres. Over 5 million members now, so it's a really large organisation with a fantastic membership base, and because we're not linked to government at all. Although many people think the National Trust is a body of government, we're not. We're an entirely independent charity. That membership base of over 5.6 million members is absolutely vital in supporting all of our work. So. So it's not only looking after those places, it's also, enabling people to visit those places. So it's absolutely, the two go hand in hand. Places and people are very much sort of two sides of the same coin for the organisation. So, there's little point in conserving things if it's not, for the benefit of, the members. Obviously nature's got its intrinsic value, but so, enabling people to enjoy and experience these extraordinary places that the organisation looks after is very much part of what we do.
And do you work autonomously as county groups, or is there a central sort of head office as well where everything happens?
Well, you can imagine in an organisation this side, it's complex. So we have a central office at Helix, which is absolutely the nerve centre of the organisation. It's where a lot of our sort of national specialist roles sit, and that's the strategic centre. So our executive board are effectively based from our office in Helix. The National Trust covers England, Wales, Northern Ireland. There's a separate National Trust for Scotland that covers Scotland. And then each of the regions, has a sort of a regional nerve centre for the east of England. And we're just sort of merged. We've just merged actually with the Midlands region. But the east of England, our nerve centre was Bury St Edmunds. And then we have we're sort of it's what we call a delegated authority model. So. We're sort of delegated, authority to general managers. So each general manager has a portfolio. So some, like me, have a number of sort of properties, in a sort of coast and countryside setting. Other general managers are general manager of a single mansion property. So we're all slightly different. So we've got the nerve centre nationally, the sort of the regional hubs, but then very much sort of the focus is, I guess, very much the operational side on properties, because that's how people manifest, how that National Trust really manifests, isn't it? That's where people visit. That's where people, see our presence on a day-to-day basis.
And you overlook Suffolk, obviously, and as well as Essex, and you must have a lot of properties under your remit.
Yeah, I don't overlook all of Essex and all of Suffolk. So other properties we've got in Suffolk, we've got Lavenham, Guildhall and Melford Hall and Ickworth. Ickworth is one general manager portfolio, and then Lavenham and Melford are part of a different portfolio called Essex and Suffolk Countryside. Okay. So I look after all of our properties on the Suffolk and Essex coast.
Yes.
So 11 properties in total, all very different, all extraordinary, all beautiful, all with amazing stories. I mean, Sutton Hoo's the biggest in terms of the operation. Orford Ness is by far the largest in terms of land area. Dunwich Heath is sort of a quintessential coastal property with, a tea room in the Coast Guard's cottages. Lovely. Yeah. Overlooking sort of Minsmere and Southwold. And then, the properties on the Essex coast are, equally interesting. There's a couple of islands that we've got down there. So it's quite varied. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary, Susanna. Actually, you kind of describe the job, and you just think it's you have to. I genuinely, it's a kind of a pinch yourself moment. Really, it's brilliant.
The information and detail in your head must be, as you just said, extraordinary.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things I love about the general manager job is you do really have a foot very much in the operational scene on property. I mean, as soon as we've done, I'm popping up to Dunwich because we had a really busy day at Dunwich yesterday, as you can imagine. As lockdown begins to ease. So, I want to go up there and support the team and sort of boots on the ground. But also as general manager, one has a role, in strategic work, both at a regional and national level. Of course. So I get involved with national projects and regional projects as well as, that boot on the ground operationally. But, I mean, on our properties, it's the diversity of what we do is extraordinary. And because of the delegated model, I'm accountable for, all of our conservation work, our compliance work, a lot of the commercial performance in terms of cafes and shops and our holidays businesses. So we've got a number of holiday cottages in the portfolio, as well as our let estate. So it's a broad remit.
As well as visiting Hollywood.
As well as visiting.
I was going to say so. I meant as well.
You want to get onto the dig, don't you?
I do. I do. I do. I really am excited, but I'm just trying. No, I think we're there. Shall we just talk about it?
Can do if you like.
We'd love to start from the beginning, how all of that happened, and your personal experience throughout.
Well, it started with John Preston's book, The Dig, which is obviously based on the 1939 excavation, which was commissioned by Edith Pretty and obviously Basil Brown. This untrained archaeologist came in and did the wonderful work that he did in terms of excavating that ship in soils that are really, really difficult to work from an archaeological perspective. Sandy soils, easy to dry out, easy to wind blow, and of course, with the acidic nature of the sandy soils, the organic matter, both ship and body and a lot of the other organic matter buried was dissolved by the acidic soil. So really difficult to excavate, and Basil did an extraordinary job. So Netflix has picked up on the book. The production team and the cast have come in and done an extraordinary job. Have you seen the film?
Yes.
What did you think?
Absolutely loved it for many reasons. Obviously the acting, the photography, and the way it actually filmed the site area and the beautiful parts of Suffolk, although they were in varied areas. Just loved all about that. But also just loved the accent.
I agree. I think it was a beautiful film. And I think a bit of a love letter to Suffolk, wasn't it, actually? There's the images of Boynton Dock and Butley Creek. And actually, I think Basil at one point cycles back to this via Aldeburgh or Orford Ness, which is an interesting route. But no, I think it was beautiful. And I think it did a really lovely job of Suffolk. I think the accents are super. I think Ray Fiennes did a brilliant job of Basil's accent. So yeah, and you're right. Some of the characters were added in. So the John Preston book, there's sort of a couple of new characters in that story. So Rory Lomax was a fictitious character. There were a couple of teachers actually on holiday back in 1939 who did the photography, and we've got a fantastic photographic archive at Sutton Hoo of the images, some of the images that they took. Peggy Piggott. So the love story between Peggy Piggott and Rory Lomax in the film is fictitious. Peggy and her husband did divorce, but not until I think the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah, but that doesn't really matter, does it? I think the central story around Edith and Basil, I think, was probably really really true to reality. The way that Basil was, somewhat pushed aside, may have been exaggerated a little bit in the book, but he came in, he started it, and he did an extraordinary job excavating the ship. And then, of course, once the British Museum realised that the importance of this find, then because he was an untrained archaeologist, then other archaeologists sort of took the lead. And I think what was also nice about it is it's we kind of missed the timing, didn't we? Because, of course, we were shut with lockdown when the film came out. But, that real sense in the film of a world of uncertainty just before the Second World War, and a real sense of endeavour of getting the job done before war broke out, and I think there was real parallels with, the time we're in at the moment, particularly the time when the film came out earlier in the year, a time of real national uncertainty with the pandemics. It's great, and lovely for the property, really fantastic for the staff and the volunteers, and we're hoping to welcome lots of people there this year on the back of the film, so that they can really come and sort of soak in the atmosphere of the place.
And how do you feel about you've obviously got film sets there, crew, so many people behind the camera. It's a sensitive area. They have to be extremely careful not to disrupt any of the original parts. Not parts. What would you call it?
Well,
you know
indeed,
what I mean.
But there's I do. Yeah. You can't go digging around in a scheduled monument. Absolutely. Well, the film, of course, the set, the house, and where the dig wasn't based on site. No, it was actually on location down in Sussex, I think it was, or Surrey. But the location, it felt really true to Sutton Hoo. The sky, the big skies, the wooded backdrop to the burial mounds was absolutely spot on. Yeah. We've got a wood called Top Hat Wood, which is just beside the burial mound, so it looked absolutely like the site itself. We're kind of used to. I mean, in the National Trust, we lots of organisations, film crews, magazine shoots, you name it, like to come to National Trust properties as locations. So we're kind of used to dealing with film crews and news crews coming and doing things on property. We had Kate Humble on the Ness last summer. That was just out on last Friday on Channel 5. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. We work around it. Obviously, we're open for visitors, so we need to manage that. But usually it's no problem at all.
Did the films actually not come at all into the Sutton Hoo area?
No, well, they filmed a lot around Suffolk, of course, and Basil, Ray Fiennes, turned up a number of times in costume as a visitor to get the feel of the place. And the story goes, so Charlie Haylock tells me, that there was a night when he sneaked in and lay on top of Mount One to really soak up the atmosphere of the burial grounds.
Wow.
So yeah, they visited and really got to know the place. I think this is part of what they do as actors, isn't it? Is not only understand the characters but also understand the story in the place. But yes, the filming of in the house itself and the dig was not at Sutton Hoo. And as you say, Susanna, I mean, a large part of that is because it's all so protected. Sutton Hoo's a scheduled monument. It's one of the most important archaeological sites in the country. So yeah, you have to, very careful. And they wouldn't have been able to do an excavation like that in Sutton Hoo, not just in the Royal Burial Grounds, but other parts of Sutton Hoo have got, for understandable reasons, over the millennia. There's all sorts of other archaeological interest on other parts of the site. Some earlier than the Anglo Saxon period. There's Iron Age stuff. There's Roman stuff. There's all sorts of things because of its situation on the landscape. Of course, it's on a hill. A Hoo, that's where the term comes from. It's on a hill overlooking the Deben, so it's always been a very high-profile location for settlements, for burials, for all sorts of things. And you tend to find, even today, actually, if you think about where churches are often sited, they're often at, on the sort of the cusp of a hill, quite prominent locations, because that's where we built buildings of prominence or burials of prominence.
Yeah. If I come to Sutton Hoo now, it's open, obviously. What's there?
Gosh, where to start? At the moment, if you come to Sutton Hoo today, we've actually got 350 people on our booking system today because of the pandemic. We're on booking systems in a number of places just so that we can manage numbers while we've still got social distancing. Our indoor places are shut, of course, still today, but all of our walks are open, so you can visit the Royal Burial Grounds. Our cafe's open for takeaways. But by the time we get to May 17th, when we can open indoors, then Trammer House will be open as an exhibition. And in Trammer House, there's a lovely exhibition around the dig itself. So the story of Basil, some of Basil's artifacts, so things like his measuring tape, some of the ship rivets, they're on display in Trammer House. So that's very much around the 1939 dig. So there's some of the photo archive I talked about. It's obviously Edith's house where she lived, and some lovely images and artifacts from Basil. And then in the exhibition hall itself, we've got some fantastic replicas that we've had built or had made, which are replicas of what was found in the burial ground itself. So, the iconic helmet, the sword, the scepter, and various drinking vessels and sort of feasting bowls. So, it was very clearly a very high status burial, and as we all know, most probably the burial of King Redwold. In the exhibition hall, we've also got some permanent loans from the British Museum from Mound 17, which was another of the mounds that was excavated in the 1980s at Sutton Hoo, and that was an excavation of a warrior and a horse. So we've got some of those original finds actually as a permanent loan from the British Museum in there. So that's open, and then obviously we have a shop. We have a second-hand bookshop, which is enormously popular. We have a National Trust shop, a National Trust cafe, and obviously then all of the walks that are open, open for visitors at the moment.
Wow, quite a destination.
It really is, and actually over the last do you know what? I almost forgot to mention the tower.
Okay.
So because that's new and it's not open yet. So we've also just over the last 4 years had a very large lottery project which is invested in that visitor experience. So we've updated, and it's a really first class. It's a world class destination, I think, Susanna. Now we've got a fantastic exhibition in the house. We've got the exhibition hall. We've got a 17-meter viewing tower at the Royal Burial Grounds. So fantastic support from Historic England, which enabled us to build a viewing tower, on the edge of the scheduled monument, which gives you an amazing bird's eye view down onto the monument itself. But also then behind you to Woodbridge and the Deben, and you can see the the port of Felixstowe and all sorts of things from
lovely.
The top of the tower. And fantastic 30-metre long ship sculpture in the courtyard as you enter the property.
Yeah.
That, life size to the ship that was.
Oh really? Okay.
Was found.
Breathtaking.
So.
And brilliant for all ages too. That's one way of getting children really involved and excited about such incredible history.
Absolutely. So Anglo Saxon's obviously on the curriculum. My children have, both not too recently, but have done Anglo Saxons and talked about Sutton Hoo as part of their schoolwork. So it's fantastic. So there's definitely something for the whole family at Sutton Hoo. So worth a visit. And after if you want to come for a local walk, then absolutely it's open now. We sell. I did some research for this. We sell 4.5 million cups of tea in the trust. So there's a stat for you. But you can come and get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a hot chocolate at Sutton Hoo and have a walk.
Yeah.
But then after by end of May, June, and fingers crossed, as long as this roadmap goes to plan. Yeah. Then all of our indoor places will be open. And come along. Fantastic visit.
Superb. Okay, on to another of your properties or premises is Orford Ness.
Yeah.
Now, Orford and Ness are two separate things. What went on that island? Because
the island of secrets. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking to the one man who knows. So, can you tell us?
Yeah, for sure. So, Orford Ness is. It's an extraordinary place. Orford and the Ness, you're right. Ness comes from the French word nose, so it's a sort of natural promontory. So so it's a bit like Lowestoft Ness, and Thorpe Ness. The natural promontories in the coast, and the Ness and then on Orford was of course where the lighthouse was sited. It's Europe's largest shingle spit, so a hugely significant geomorphological structure in itself. It's internationally designated for wildlife. Some of the buildings are listed or scheduled monuments. And in the 20th century, it was effectively taken over by the military. And in World War I, World War II, and the Cold War, it was a top secret location where all sorts of military research took place. So, going back to the very, very early days, the Royal Flying Corps were based there before they were the RAF. And some of the very, very early experiments around aerial warfare took place. And this was just things like bombing, and in an accurate way, bombing in straight lines. Testing of all sorts of ordnance when dropped from planes. Things like the interrupters on machine guns on the front of aircraft, sort of take it as read that when you fire your machine gun from a cockpit of a World War I or II fighter, you don't blow the propeller off. Of course, that's really sophisticated mathematics to work out when the bullet fires, so it fires between the blades of the propeller. That sort of military research is all going on Orford Ness, as was early use of parachutes and all sorts of tests to look at how aeroplane fuselages responded to anti-aircraft, anti-aircraft, all that sort of stuff. But then rolling on to the Cold War, and I think this is where so much of the military interest is. There's a series of laboratories, 5 laboratories on the Shingle area of the Ness, which were built in the 1950s to test the cases of nuclear weapons. So if you think about taking a nuclear weapon either in an aeroplane or a helicopter or by submarine to another part of the world, you need to ensure that when you deploy that weapon, it's in a fit state. So you've got to do all sorts of environmental testing on the casing. So in vibration tests, heat tests, drop tests, all those sorts of tests, and that's what's happening on the Ness. It was testing the environmental testing of the nuclear weapons cases. So we understand there was never any nuclear explosive material, but there was certainly explosive material on the Ness. And to date, it's a site where unexploded ordnance is a constant challenge for us. but yeah, it was a secret site. So one of the National Trust got an extraordinary collection, as you can imagine, across our houses and all sorts of things, amazing paintings and all sorts of fantastic things in the collection. One of the things we have in our collection is a nuclear bomb case.
Yeah.
So if you come on a trip there, so you can see one of the nuclear bomb cases that was tested there.
I find the whole Cold War fascinating. Everything, it's intriguing, and we'll never know all of it. I just wonder whether there was, and I'm probably not, because it's an island pretty much it's on the coast, so the water table must be pretty high, or near the river. But I just wondered if there were bunkers there.
No, there's no underground bunkers.
No, okay.
Well, not that I know of anyway, Susanna. No. There's no underground bunkers, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's most of the marshes, which is where things like the World War I airfield was, are effectively below sea level. So, like many of the marshes are on the Suffolk estuaries, they're behind river walls.
Yeah. Okay.
Which we maintain. So, no nuclear bunkers.
No. Okay. As far as we know, right? Just still adding the mystique there. What you have many other sites too. Tell us about some others.
So, well, I mean, there are numbers. I mean, I think Orford Ness and Sutton Hoo are just extraordinary and real destinations, actually. And it's interesting with our member profile, the people who visit Sutton Hoo and Orford tends to attract people from more than 2 hours away.
Wow.
So a lot of our National Trust properties, are real hubs for local visits. So places like Ickworth House in Bury St Edmunds, it's a real sort of green lung for Bury St Edmunds, and that's where most of the visitors come from. Places like Sutton Hoo and Orford Ness, because they are just so different. Obviously for different reasons, but just so different. And our visitor profiles from much further away are sort of real destination sites. The other sites are, I guess, less destination sites, but just as lovely. So we've got a small place up near Denton, just outside, just on the sort of Norfolk-Suffolk border, which is a little place called Darrow Wood. I've no idea why it's called Darrow Wood. It's not a wood. It's actually two fields, but there's one of the best examples of a Motte and Bailey castle in the corner of one of these fields. So have a look up Darrow Wood and plan a visit. You're likely it's likely to be a very quiet visit. There's no infrastructure there. There's no tea rooms. There's no nothing, but it's a beautiful spot in the middle of nowhere with a lovely example of a Motte and Bailey. I'm sort of starting north and working south, actually.
Yeah, that's
right.
Good.
Next spot, I think, which is just lovely, is Dunwich Heath. So, many of the listeners will know about, Dunwich and the history of Dunwich and coastal change and how Dunwich is a, thriving port in the early medieval period is now, very much just a small coastal village. We've got about 250 acres of heathland there. Beautiful heathland habitat over, high up on the top of the cliffs, overlooking Minsmere to the south, and Dunwich and Walberswick and Southwold to the north. So really, really popular place for visitors. As I say, with this glorious weather we're having at the moment, just before Easter, it's busy up there. We've got Coast Guard's cottages up there, which some really lovely sort of social history around. And a lovely tea room. So that Dunwich Heath, really super place. I think one of the nicest tea rooms on the Suffolk coast, I have to say.
It's good to have a personal recommendation.
Well, National Trust scones are pretty good. I have to say that, and the National Trust sausage rolls are pretty good too. But the views from Coast Guard's cottages are just they're phenomenal. Yeah. So
forgive me, but I didn't know we actually had cliffs.
Well, we do. They're not these granite cliffs of the west of the country, and they're not the beautiful chalk cliffs of the south. We have sandy cliffs, which are pretty soft, I have to say. They get, one sees lots of imagery of the north and Suffolk coast and bits of cliff slumping after periods of high rainfall or coastal storms. But we're probably, I don't know, it's probably 20 or 30 metre cliff. So it's you wouldn't want to fall over the edge of it.
My goodness, no.
It affords you a fantastic view of Southwold Bay from the Coast Guard's cottages. So So if listeners want to have a walk on a beautiful piece of beach, which we keep really clean, so we regularly beach clean. This 1 mile sort of mile stretch of beach that we own as part of Dunwich Heath. Come along to Dunwich Heath. Again, grab yourself one of the numbers of cups of tea that we make, and take a walk on the beach. And there's beautiful circular walk to do from Dunwich to include some of Minsmere as well. So spectacular wildlife up there. It's really well known for the Dartford warbler.
The what? Sorry.
So it's beautiful. The Dartford warbler.
Okay.
Which sort of sounds like you should be coming from the Devon area, but no. So Dunwich Heath is a real stronghold for Dartford warbler, and they're sort of particularly visible at this time of year. And then in August, this absolute sea of heather flowers. So you just got this amazing purple landscape.
Oh, wow.
At the Heath, with this white Coast Guard's cottage sort of overlooking it all. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I can imagine. How lovely.
So then we come down past Orford Ness, and we talked about Orford Ness and past Sutton Hoo. And then just on the outskirts of Woodbridge, we've got a small property called Kyson Hill. So that's on the Woodbridge side of the river. Obviously, Sutton Hoo is on the opposite side of the river to Woodbridge. So Kyson Hill, which is one of our earliest properties in Suffolk, actually, it's a small piece of green space by Kyson Point, just before the Deben sort of turns into Martlesham Creek. And it's got beautiful views from up there across the Deben and across Woodbridge to the tide mill. So, part of a regular walk, a sort of circular walk from Woodbridge along the river wall at Woodbridge and back. So Kyson Hill's lovely, and then I think finally, before we get into Essex, and I know we're going to talk about Suffolk, so the final one I think to touch on is Pin Mill. So again, another beautiful location behind the Button Oyster Pub is a lovely stretch of woodland with all sorts of walks overlooking the Orwell estuary, which we also look after. Yeah. So something for everyone, Susanna.
Yeah. Definitely. I suddenly drifted off into Lovejoy then, because there's a lot of that television series filmed around there. I was just bringing it back. That's all when you said Pin Mill.
Yeah, well, it is, and it's also really Swallows and Amazons sort of area as well, isn't it?
Of course. Gosh, Arthur Anson, that takes me back.
There we are.
Wow. Okay. So all of these sites that you've mentioned, obviously some of them you have to pay for access, some of them are free to the public. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. But ideally, when you become a member of the National Trust, you get obviously reduced rates and specific access.
That's right. So I think membership of the National Trust is really important for us in terms of supporting supporting us to look after these places. So I think it really supports the conservation of coast and countryside properties and also our built heritage. But also membership of the trust gives you free access to all of those trust properties. So over 500 mansion properties and free car parking to any of our coastal properties where we have car parks. So we always say access is free if you're a member, and in being a member you're helping the largest conservation charity in Europe look after some of our nation's most important natural and built assets. So it's our membership support is hugely important to the organisation, and actually I think it's really good value. If you enjoy visiting these sorts of places, or you really support our cause, then as an individual member at the moment, it's £72 a year, so it's about £6 a month. A family membership's £10 a month. So, if you think what and I was thinking about this the other day, actually, what we spend on things like our contracts for our phones these days, actually that's and these are such amazing places where you've got these really deep, good experiences of nature or heritage that you can share with your family and build lifelong memories, and all that sort of stuff on these. Then actually, this is really, really, being a member is hugely important, but I also think, really, really good value. Yeah. But you're right. So some of them do cost an awful lot of money to look after, and actually, I think in 2018-19, I did a bit of research for this. In 2018-19, we spent about 148 million looking after these places. Yeah. in terms of their conservation, and even more on a basis of running them day to day. So it's an expensive job looking after places like this, and so that admission price for those who are not members is equally an important way of supporting our cause work, just as that membership fee is if you're a member.
How do we become a member?
Well, I think the easiest the easiest thing at the moment is to join online. So I think for your listeners, given we're having this sort of podcast chat, I think the easiest thing to do is to go to the National Trust website, and you can join as a member there.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you. That's great. And it's it's easy to find the National Trust. Just Google it. Obviously, it's right there. It's everywhere. So, Nick, thank you so much for talking to us in so much depth about so many incredible places. You've really enthused us to go out and discover more in Suffolk.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, the time's absolutely flown, hasn't it? But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I think particularly now, I think what we've seen is that lockdown has really, people are really desperate to get out, which is completely understandable. I think there's been a real connection with nature during lockdown, whether that be in people's gardens or people noticing back in the first lockdown when things were so quiet, nature was suddenly coming to the fore where everything was so quiet. So, do think about, joining the trust, coming and visiting some of these properties in Suffolk. Similarly, I'd say Ickworth House, just brilliant. If you're in the west of the county, Ickworth House is just a wonderful place to visit for the day. As are, Melford Hall and Lavenham Guildhall. Really, really lovely properties. I would say, just sort of be kind to one another as you go out and visit. I think there's a lot of pent up demand to get out. Yeah. As I said, before we started this, I'm going popping up to Dunwich after this because we were really, really busy there yesterday. So as you get out into the countryside, just think about wildlife. This is a really sensitive time of year. Birds are beginning to breed, and with this good weather, it's lovely for us as people, but wildlife needs to get on too. So, and there's lots of lambs about too. So, thinking about dogs off leads where we've got livestock. Yeah. Sticking to paths so we're not disturbing birds. And being kind to each other in terms of queuing for cups of tea or whatever. Just but yeah, do come and visit because we're open and we can't wait to see visitors back on our properties.
Well, we're on our way. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Nick. And would you come back in about 6 months and tell us how the summer has been and give us some more updates?
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'd love to.
Fantastic. Thank you. Speak soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to The Suffolk Pod Show. Find us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or you can visit our website, podtalk.co.uk. And here's our disclaimer.
The Suffolk Pod Show will not be held responsible for any omissions or errors in its podcast.
The Suffolk Pod Show is produced purely for entertainment purposes. Views and opinions are that of our own or that of our guests.